make the pronouncement here. Good evening. This is Wednesday, January 26th, meeting of the Community Preservation Act Committee. As a preliminary matter, please note that this meeting is being recorded and some of the attendees are participating by video conference. Accordingly, please be aware that other folks may be able to see you. Anything you decide to share, screen share on your computer, or anything you broadcast will be captured and recorded. I'm Tim Wheeler, Chair of the Community Preservation Act Committee. Permit me to confirm that all members, so we got MJ.
Yep.
And Carolyn.
Here.
And Elaine.
Here.
And Eloise. Ding. That must mean she's here.
Oh, no.
And James is here. Anyway, good enough. With the quorum of the committee present, I will call the meeting to order at 7:01. The open meeting of the Community Preservation Act Committee is being conducted remotely, consistent with Governor Baker's executive order. Specific information and guidelines for the remote participation by members of the public can be found on the town's website. And the governor's order allows us to proceed in this fashion. And 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, where there's no other participants other than the 6 we've got so far, right? So we're good. And minutes.
Yes.
Do we have a motion to accept the minutes of December? What were they anyway?
It was October 15th, I think, and December 21st.
No, December 15th and January, oops. Yeah, October 13th and January 15th.
Okay, thank you.
So moved on the 13th.
Second.
All right, we'll do a roll call on that. MJ,
Aye.
Elaine,
Aye.
Carolyn,
Aye.
James,
Aye.
Eloise. She's there in Never Never Land. And Tim, yes, so it passes. I spoke to the personnel
Should
committee.
we
and-
accept the other ones too?
Yeah, we should have done them both.
Oh, did
I'll
you?
move on the 15th.
I'll
All right.
second.
All right, we'll do a roll call on that. MJ,
Aye.
Elaine,
Aye.
Carolyn,
Aye.
James.
Aye.
He must be in Timbuktu, huh? And then Eloise. And Tim, yes. Okay, good. I spoke to the personnel committee and they're supportive of our posting this administrative position, this assistant position for the committee. And if we're happy with the way it's set up right now, we can send it off to the Board of Selectmen for their approval, and then we can get it posted. So if they approved it early in February, we could post it along mid-February or so, and maybe get an application deadline for like early March, and chat with a few people if anybody applies, and get some help as we proceed into the spring and get into the next round and work on the round of the projects that we've already got. So do people have thoughts about, I sent it around again as a reminder just a little bit ago because I wasn't sure everybody would have it at their fingertips. So does anybody have any thoughts about any changes we want to make? What's that mean?
Does anybody have any thoughts?
About modifying this in any way? Everybody's happy with it the way it is? I think we'll get rid of the contractor thing and just leave it as the employee.
Yeah, we hadn't completely decided on that.
everything we've looked at seems to indicate that most everybody uses it, fills it as an employee, and that makes it a lot easier, I think, so.
Yep. One thing it does is increases the odds of the same person continuing on in the job.
Yeah.
Yep. How many hours are we putting in for?
Well, we talked to them about 8 to 10. It seems like it's going to vary seasonally, so we thought that we might put some sort of description in it that made that clear, that it wouldn't be any more than on an average X, but that sometimes it might exceed that number and other times it might be pretty quiet.
Right.
It does seem like the tasks are going to not be uniform month to month or week to week, so but it would give us a good amount of coverage. We could send somebody like this on expeditions to investigate what's going on in other towns, virtually, but, so we could say, do a little research on this and get back to us, do a little research on that and get back to us. So I think if there are periods that are slow and we feel like we've got to pursue some things, we can give them some assignments like that, probably. So.
Sure.
So
Excellent.
no other comments? Did somebody want to make a motion that we submit this to the select board for their approval and then posting?
So moved.
I'll second that.
A second. All right, well, any other discussion on that? So we'll do a roll call on that. MJ,
Aye.
Elaine,
Aye.
Carolyn,
Aye.
James,
Aye.
Eloise, thank you, Eloise. And I approve too. So that's voted. Now, I had a nice discussion with June today. Because I was trying to get a handle on what she feels we have. And the numbers I had and the numbers she had are close. I think I may feel that ultimately when we look at this more closely, we might have another 25,000 more than she's identified, but regardless, 25,000 out of the total package isn't that much. So at the town meeting, in June, we voted to put aside funds into certain allocated, funding sites. And what we did is we put 48,000 into housing, 48,000 into historic, 48,000 to open space and rec, 24,233 into admin, and 315,000 into the general pool. Now, when you add those sums up, you come up with the 484 figure that she and I both felt comfortable with from the beginning of 22. Because the revenue from this year was greater than what we allocated, because we ended up with the 281 and doubled it. So we ended up with, 562 essentially. It ends up being more, but we drew some out of that account, out of this fiscal year, 31,000 when we did our articles there in the fall. So that lowers the number somewhat. But I think what we have to work with for the town meeting that we can feel real comfortable with. And, you know, perhaps we can modify it upwards a little bit when we get closer to, you know, finalizing the warrant that's going to be sent out. But we got 40, we know we've got 48. June's comfortable with 48 in each of those three accounts, and we've got 315 in the budgeted reserve. Now we've got applications for 350 for conservation for the continuation of that purchase on the McGrail piece, we're calling it now.
Yep.
We've got 100,000 for historic. We've got 75,000 for rec, and we've got 30, 36, 39
39,
for
39.
ag. For ag. So those 350, 450, 525, 6. So we're looking at 565.
Yeah.
And so we don't have that unless we do what we did this year, which was to pull money from the anticipated revenue from the next fiscal year. Now, in the past, we've had some discussions about whether or not we, like Hudson, want to just use money that we've actually got and only use that, and then hold that next quantity for the next fiscal year for that year. So I think that's a discussion we probably ought to have again, just to make sure we understand what the implications are, and then understand that we all feel a certain way or we don't, you know. So how do folks feel about, and then of course the other option, like June talked to me today about, was that you can borrow against the anticipated revenue, but Hudson didn't do that until probably 12 years into their program, when they had a real big project that was going to demand more money than they'd been able to accrue. And June is uncomfortable with that because it anticipates revenue that you don't have, and you assume the world is going to hold together, but there aren't guarantees necessarily. So do people have thoughts about whether we should just use money that we've actually received, or whether we should be trying to forecast what the anticipated revenues are and pull from those?
I think in general, it would probably be good going forward if we try to avoid spending money we don't have yet. Particularly, I would not want to borrow against future years. I'm uncomfortable with that, and I hesitate to want to, you know, rely on, you know, even the upcoming year. You know, the world could collapse. So if the world collapsed, maybe we don't have to pay back people. So you know, there is that you know, it can go both ways. But I would think, in terms of what we're looking at for this meeting and for the upcoming town meetings, I mean, we've already kind of committed to the conservation piece. That's obviously the big chunk of money, and I would feel comfortable in going with anticipated revenues in order to get that through, with the understanding that we have A, committed to it through having done the first piece, and B, with the understanding that we don't next round see much of anything on that. You know, if this is the big piece and that's you know source of requests quiets down after this, I'm okay with a little more liberal on how we look at the money in order to get through this keystone piece, as I think it has been described. I'm willing to go with that.
All right, other thoughts?
Well, I definitely agree with MJ. You know, I think we don't want to get into the habit of overspending. It's bad practice. And yeah, you know, once this purchase is completed, you know, barring anything unforeseen about, there are two other large pieces of property that are looking at wanting to do something, but there's nothing currently in the actual works about that. And maybe that gets funded a different way. I don't know, but we do have time if we can't fund the balance of this project at the spring town meeting. Sudbury Valley Trustees is going to give us a little bit more time so we can try to find the money somewhere else. But the reality is, if we don't fund it all this time, I'm asking for it next time. You know, so we either do it all now or we do it in pieces and wind up paying more money in interest to Sudbury Valley Trustees, or it comes out of free cash. And I'm not sure how people are going to feel about asking for it out of free cash with CPA being in place. So that's kind of where I'm at with all of this.
Any grants going to come into effect with that, you think?
So the way the grants work is you have to have all of the money, and then the grants are reimbursement grants. So that is actually a very good point, James. If we do get one of the two grants that we've applied for, that money goes back into the CPA fund. So then the CPA fund is going to have a huge chunk of money coming back at it. But unfortunately, none of us can count on that money by the spring. Tim, did you verify that actually?
So I talked to June and I said, and I talked to Linda Galoni from Hudson, who's on the CPA committee over there. And I said, so you expend CPA money and the state comes in at a later time, and the state's not going to give you money until you've spent it, but we can't spend it. We have to have a third party purchase. So the third party purchases it. We pay the third party, and then the state reimburses us.
So normally the way it would work is that we would enter into an option agreement with the property owner. But and then, you know, we have 9 months to buy it. We apply for the grant, we get it or we don't, but we still buy it. reason Sudbury Valley Trustees is involved in this case is the property owners weren't interested in doing that with the town. So Sudbury Valley Trustees right now has an option to buy with them. I think it's 3 months or 6 months or something. The property owners didn't want to have to rely on town meeting votes and all of that. They wanted, we will buy this property for this amount of money agreement. So we're buying it from SVT, who will be the property owner.
But
Does
the
that answer your
Berlin,
question?
the community of Berlin is applying to the state, and any state money would come to Berlin, but only after we'd expended that
After
equivalent
we
amount.
appropriated that amount of money. We don't necessarily have to buy the land. We just have to have an agreement to pay for it.
Okay,
Yes,
so if you have an agreement with Sudbury Valley, the state would reimburse you.
correct. So at this town meeting, no matter what happens here tonight or with CPA funds at town meeting, there will be an item on the warrant to expend the balance of of the money of the 1.25, because we have to show the state at town meeting that we will spend this money
So you need
in order as part of the grant process.
the town, one way or another, has to come up with another $760.
Correct.
And you're asking us for $350, which would still leave you short $410.
Correct. Conservation's going to put in 250. And then if 350 or whatever
Right,
tonight. So that's 5,600. So that still does leave us about $100,000 short.
okay.
Yeah,
Tim, you got that right?
What?
You got that right? That 100 grand?
Yeah, I'll take care of it.
Okay.
now
Sweet corn, yeah.
wait, so interestingly, and I have to get clarification about this from Krista, and I meant to do that today and just didn't get to it. The Sudbury Valley Trustees has received an anonymous donation. I guess they have a pool of anonymous donors that they solicit money from, and they have gotten $75,000 towards this purchase.
Really?
Yes. So,
Huh.
some of which will go towards the associated costs, the appraisal, the lawyers, this and that, and the other thing. So I don't know how much of that then goes towards the actual land, and if that comes off of the purchase price that they're going to charge us. So, but let's say we get 50,000 of that off the purchase price. So that's 1.2. We've got 490, 250 from the Conservation Commission. So that leaves us at 460 that we need.
Good.
Yeah.
The conversation I did have with June was, if the town were to put up, let's say 100,000 in free cash,
Mhm.
would she assume that that any state money that came back would first replenish that 100,000 before it went into CPA.
Right.
And I think I had that conversation with Margaret as well. And I think we felt that given the fact that CPA money is anticipated, we're anticipating that it's going to be spent on one of these three topics, historic, housing, or conservation rec, that not to replenish the town first probably wouldn't be appropriate, because the town is, in that case, taking money out of a fund that could go for a variety of other uses. So
Sure.
you'd probably say that it ought to go there first. But then, as you've said, any of the additional money goes back into CPA. And if you were to get a grant like in July or August, it would replenish, and whether it would be available for expenditure in a November town meeting or not, I'm not sure.
Right, because
Because
it's not allocated.
Right. But it would be certainly available in the annual for 23.
Right.
Okay.
If the town gets back money before CPA gets back, with CPA then get back before conservation would get back for the money it's putting in?
Would the money go generally to CPA, or is that what you're saying?
Well, no, because Carolyn was saying conservation itself was putting in some money.
Oh,
If
yeah.
I understood that correctly. So if the town gets money back before CPA gets money back, would CPA get money back before Conservation Commission gets money back?
I'd argue that that's fair, but
I would, if the town's ability to expend the money more broadly than CPA is a qualifying factor, then CPA being more broad than conservation would seem to also be the same factor.
Sure. Correct. And you know, before we had CPA, any mitigation from any of the projects for open space went into our open space account. We've got 3 more payments from Solomon Pond Mall. So that'll be 150,000 over the next 3 years. And that's it. That's all. And this, if we take 250 out, that's going to leave us with about $30,000 in our open space fund. So going forward, any open space expenditures are going to have to come through CPA or free cash anyway.
Yep.
So there's, you know,
so
drawing down our open space account is kind of irrelevant.
Yeah.
Because of CPA now.
So we got a little off track. I guess there's consensus here that we ought to stick with money in hand and not dip into money that's anticipated. Am I speaking for everybody?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay,
All
go ahead.
right. So all of the money is basically going to go to the land.
No. The way I look at it, there's at least 48,000 for historic.
Okay, not
and
the,
maybe as much as 56.
yeah, 56 was what we thought last year was going to be left, but now and then at the FinCom meeting, it was 53. And now you're saying it's 48?
Well, that's June's number, and I think that number will increase because she'll be able to say, indeed, we've collected X amount of money. But because we don't have the tax collection from May of 23, which is fiscal 22, she can't she can't say that we've indeed got X amount, you know, but she's comfortable with the 48 figure, and I think it's going to rise. It'll be bigger than that. So I guess the question for Historic Commission is, can you accomplish some of those first steps that you talked about in your proposal, where you need to get the consultant in to begin to get some figures that'll allow you to go to the state and apply for some of that matching money? Or is this going to shortfall you quite a bit?
Well, if you saw the breakdown, yeah, we need 30 at least to start the project. But one of the problems is we have to hold that $100,000 that we got in the fall,
Right.
matching money, and we don't even know if we're going to get the grant. Okay, so
Right.
I have Kyle here. He's involved in this, and if you'd like to talk to him and ask him more questions, he's right here.
Yeah, so I mean, it's really a question of how much can you get done with 48?
So,
If there was a possibility of, and that's what we got to figure out, going after more money in the fall.
so the objective here is to take the 100,000 that we got in the fall, try to get a state grant for another 100,000. But to do that, we need to have, as a minimum, architectural services, which are not an allowable cost under the terms of the grant.
Right.
So we have to fund that directly. So as a bare minimum, we would need the architectural services monies. Let's see, where is that?
That's the 10.
No, that's the
Oh, that's the first 30.
that's the 30,000. Yes.
And then
yes.
what about the architectural services that's down below in the 10?
Okay, so that's necessary to implement the other tasks that add up to $60,000, which are defined in the paragraph there.
Okay.
Now, there is a potential concern here, as I try to address it in the paragraph, with respect to the supplemental study that Squaw Hollow is performing. That estimate, he just finished the actual physical survey of the building a few days back. He's writing the report, and he hopes to have the report and the estimated dollars that will be associated with his findings. That won't be available until the mid-February timeframe, or about another 2 weeks. So at the moment of that 60,000, there's 28,000 in there for that particular task. Now, whether that's a good number, it just worked out mathematically that way. It's not his estimate. My gut feeling is going to be at least that, or potentially more, but I don't have any idea as to the amount of money right now until he brings that to our attention in about 2 weeks, mid-February timeframe.
And one of the requirements for the grant is that we have to have an architect on board.
Right.
Yep.
So there is a little bit of flexibility within the 60,000, but that could be jeopardized by whatever number Tim Woolheater comes up with in the next 2 weeks.
Right.
I hope that helps.
Oh, that does.
So the 10,000 architectural service, it was identified to implement all of the 60,000 up above it. And that's based, again, somewhat arbitrary. I did talk to Lee, what's his name?
Lee Tabor.
Lee Tabor, who was a former architect, about how much money do you think on a percentage basis should we put in? And he said a range of 10 to 15%. So I went with the 15%.
Mhm.
for lack of a better number at this time.
Good. Carl, while we've got you here, do you want to speak to the Ag Commission's proposal too?
Okay, if you have any questions, I'd be glad to try to address them. Sure.
Well, just, sort of outline for everybody the
Oh, okay.
objectives again and.
Okay, sure. All right. I didn't know I was going to be called to duty here, so I got to just get to the right page here.
Well, we've got you. We might as well
Yeah,
utilize it,
right. You
right?
got to take advantage of it. Huh? So the objective here is to get a nice solid fence around the whole community garden. The town of Hudson has had one in place for several years. And there are several advantages. One, of course, is keeping wild animals out of the garden, the rabbits and the woodchucks and deer and stuff like that. But it also has a major impact on the potential for reducing theft, both people walking in and taking crops out of the garden, as well as other damage. We've had over the years some vandalism down there. We lost a couple of solar arrays when we were relying on the solar pump. So there's a big advantage for having a good solid enclosure around the whole garden area. So that's the essence of it, and that's what we're looking for.
They have a temporary fence up this year, and that helped a great deal.
Yeah, we were able with some other state funding, we put up a temporary fence around just the footprint area of the actual garden. And that did help keeping the critters out. And it also helped keeping people out that shouldn't be in there looking to pick red tomatoes and stuff like that. But it's a very temporary plastic type of thing. And this certainly would be a lot more durable and would last for many years. I think the one in Hudson, which is still in great condition, is about 15 or so years old. So that's what we're looking at here. And it's based upon a solid estimate. We attach that to it from the Arrow Fence Company. They're the same people that put the fencing in for the Hudson Community Garden. So we have a high degree of confidence in their estimate here. If we had the money in hand today, I think we could sign it and get them turned on and put it in today. We have a good feeling about our numbers that we have submitted here. We will, of course, if we're fortunate enough to get the funding, go out for competitive bids, and it'll be what it'll be at that time.
Perfect. Thank you.
You're welcome. Any other questions?
Committee, any other questions you want to ask Carl? Well, we got him. All right. And then we've got $100,000, $75,000 pre-app from Rec.
What's that? Okay.
I sent that around to everybody, right?
Yep.
CPA funding to do much needed repairs and reconstructions to the town playground located on the recreational grounds of South Common. The playground is not currently up to code due to low ratings of hazardous equipment. In addition to getting all the structures up to code, the Recreation Committee intends to purchase an ADA playground structure so we can meet the needs of children and all children in our community. Asking a certified playground inspection company to do an up-to-date inspection, and based on the findings of the report, repair and replacement any equipment not up to code. We had the playground inspected in 2018 and received a low safety rating for the current equipment. So those are the four. And that's all we've got, right?
I do believe.
So people have thoughts? What's your sense, folks? We don't have enough. So any ideas?
Well, we're in a real pickle at the Bullard House. I know that. And we were going to apply for the round 28 grant, which we had just found out about, and towards the right after Christmas, I think. And it turns out that the requirements are so great from so many people. We're putting it off to the round 29 grant. They do it. It's a cyclical thing that they do every year. And there's a lot of work we've already done, but there's a lot of work yet to be done. And the town, the town needs to do some legal things. Historical needs to do some things, and it's a big project. So we don't even know if we'll get it, but we need some assurances that we'll have, the architectural money, because it's a lot bigger than we thought.
So how much do you have to spend?
Well,
Do you think?
we're holding the 100,000 from the first project, okay, for the foundation work, for matching funds. And because we have that money, you have to have the money in hand. And and the selectmen are fine with us doing that, okay? And so that will give us 200,000 to accomplish a lot of the tasks. You want to go into more detail on that?
What was the question again?
Well,
I'm back again. I overheard the conversation, sorry.
Yeah.
So what was the question again, please?
Well, I started to ask, how much do you have to spend? So first of all, the grant that you're applying for is for 100,000.
to match the 100,000 we
Yeah.
already have.
Right.
Yes.
Right.
So it'd be a
And-
$200,000 project if we get the
Sure.
grant.
Yep. And how much do you have to spend to meet the requirements for the 100,000?
So what we would have to do, I can't give you an exact number, but what we would have to do is have the architect on board. Okay. In fact, I have a procurement plan. I should have brought that out for going ahead to obtain the architect. We need to have him on board to help us respond to the grant requirements as a minimum. So of that 30,000, okay, I don't know exactly the dollars that would come out of that 30,000, but a good portion of it would have to go towards helping us prepare for the grant. And also within days after the award of the grant, which would be in July of 23, the architect has to have a full procurement package available. So my assessment right now is we need the 30,000 as a minimum to go forward with the grant, cover the front end of it. And if we're successful in getting the grant, to be able to immediately turn over to the state a procurement package to implement the $200,000 worth of tasks.
So if we wrote an article that took everything that was available in that historic preservation pocket, which I think June agrees is at a minimum 58, and I think it's probably closer to 53. You'd be able to get off the ground with your hiring the architectural services that would allow you to proceed with the request for the matching money for your 100, right?
That's correct.
Good. And you'd have a little bit of change left over probably for some other miscellaneous stuff, but
yeah, this is there are a lot of moving parts here. Again, the supplement that Tim Woolhead is coming up with, it's a structural item. And so what the objective here is to get as many of the structural issues taken care of first before we start doing any type of cosmetic issues with the bullet house. So within the 200,000, there are a lot of structural items would be addressed, plus some cosmetic. By cosmetic, I mean, the outside trim, new clapboards, painting, weatherizing, it's really not cosmetic in a fancy way. It's what's necessary to get the building weather tight. So we want to get into the grant in that 200,000, all the structural issues. So the building is at least solid. And that's where this supplemental task that Tim is working on could come into play here. Because I think my gut feeling is it's going to be fairly significant. So we may have to pull something out of what we've identified in the 200,000 and postpone it to take care of this other potential issue. But I can't do that until I know what the number is, which will be about 2 weeks.
Right. Now, the Brown 29, that wouldn't be something that you'd be able to hear about until when? July of 23?
23.
Yeah, so if they follow the similar schedule, which we believe that it will be like in round 28, which we just passed on, okay, we would anticipate that the grant would be due in March of 23, and that the award would be in July of 23, and that the tasks have to be done by the end of June of 24.
Now, do you have to have the money physically in hand
Yes,
by March of 23?
we have to have. Not only do we have to have the 100,000 and yes, we have to have our portion of the money in hand. Plus, we need to have a bit more because of the cash flow problem generated by the state for when they reimburse us. So they tell us in the grant that not only do we need to have, the actual cash in hand for the tasks, but we need to have provisions to allow for paying contractors while we're waiting for the state check, is what it boils down to. So we need.
That wouldn't be, none of those funds would be expended till after July of 23.
Except for the architectural services, that's true.
Right. So the opportunity is there. I guess what I'd be interested in exploring is ways in which to make certain that we've got the money that you need by town meeting of 23. And so maybe what we're talking about is,
Excuse me, Tim, when we submit the grant, which would be in March of 22, we have to have the money in hand by then.
well, you've got the 100,000 in hand.
We got the 100,000, right?
And
Right,
that's what you're going to match with.
that's correct.
But they'd like you to have the contingency, the extra also.
And how much do they want for the contingency? Or they recommend, or do you
well,
estimate?
They don't use the term contingency. Again, contingency is not an allowable cost. They just want to make sure you have enough cash on hand to meet the cash flow requirements. And I did a presentation of that.
I don't know that here.
I'd have to go to my file. I did a presentation on that to the Historical Commission, so they were aware of that.
So if you don't have to really spend money until after July of 23, maybe we need to discuss the possibility of allocating what we anticipate you'll have available to you out of this year's money, that other 50,000, where we've done that. We did that last year. We pulled the 31. Because you're not going to spend it, all we're doing is committing it. And it's committing money that you actually are going to have
By that
because
time.
you've got that other 50,000 coming. So if we were to say, you're going to get 50,000 of this year and we always get confused about what we're talking about here, but I think we understand. We're
Right.
going to give you 50 of money that we've really got, and we're going to commit 50 of money that we anticipate in the fiscal year that we're in, that we don't want to expend, but we're not going to expend it.
Right.
You're going to expend the 50. And then
Right,
that
but-
other,
But we'll commit to the 50 for future funds, which is what you guys need for the grant, is you need that commitment. You don't need the actual dollars.
and it seems as though you can pull from the 100. I mean, you'd already talked about that a little bit. Can you pull from the 100 that you've already got? And we make up the difference with that anticipated amount? No, huh?
I don't think I can because the first 100,000, as it was presented at town meeting, with specific tasks.
Okay,
And that's what we're gearing the grant money to. Is that,
Yep.
Is those tasks that money's allocated towards.
because the foundation work is going to be more than what we were looking for.
right. All right, good. Other thoughts, folks?
About, well, so, I mean, I feel bad that Julie's not here,
Right.
but Tim, you and I talked about this a little bit. Are we going to accept a pre-application with no backup for recommendation at town meeting?
I mean, this is the pre-app, so although she filled it out as an application, the this application for rec is a little, well, substantially looser than the other three. I mean, historic and ag and conservation have all come in with figures that are pretty firm and reliable. So, you know, we're still not in the cycle for a lot of reasons, COVID and just getting our hands wet. So, you know, theoretically, we would have the pre-app in December 1st, and we'd be looking at final applications now, and we'd be getting ready for putting an article on the warrant in a couple of weeks when the warrant closes. So we're running a little behind, but it doesn't, I guess it doesn't seem to me as though the rec proposal is as well formulated as these other three. And hit the historic one and the conservation issue for the land are really dependent. They can't move forward at all. And they're dependent on capturing other monies that's going to help the town accomplish those objectives. I don't see that with the recreation one. So, you know, I'm more likely, I guess, to say we'll put myself, I guess I'd put that one on hold for now and say, you know, we'll deal with that in another round. They've got 120,000 that they've got committed now, plus some additional money for the tennis courts and the baseball stuff. And I know that doesn't address the playground, but they've got projects that they're going to have to be working on. So that's my sense. I don't know. What do other people feel about that one?
You know, I feel the same.
Okay. Anybody else?
I would have to agree with that act, I suppose.
Now, I guess one of the questions that we can talk to Margaret about and the finance committee, I mean, conservation is going to have this conversation one way or another. You've got to get a sense as to how much free cash you can pull toward getting to the 1250 number, right?
Right.
And if there's an assurance that any money that might come back from the state goes in to replenish that before it comes back to CPA, it seems like, not that there's any guarantee you get the grant, but what's your sense? Is it 50-50? Is it? What are your
As far as whether we'll be able to use free cash?
No, whether you'll get the grant.
Oh, geez, that's so hard. So there's lots of money right now
Yeah.
because, especially for the MVP grant,
Right.
with the American Recovery money. So that increases the odds. This piece of property has been on the radar of the state for a long time,
Mhm.
finishing this Pisgah area.
Right.
So that's in our favor. Since we got the grant for the Oberg piece, which is the next piece down Lyman Road, the state is putting more emphasis on environmental justice populations, of which Berlin doesn't really do well in that category.
Right.
So, where it is something that's open to the public and very close to Clinton does have higher environmental justice populations. The other thing that we're looking at doing to increase our odds, Margaret pointed out that senior citizens are considered an environmental justice population. And this is where we kind of run into a little, we can do this one way or we can do it another way. Because we don't know, we've always used the ability to sell a lot or two as a way to get some money for this. Because we haven't been able to perk the land, we don't know exactly where those house lots would be. But we know for sure that we would get at least 1 or 2 house lots out of the flat area on the corner of Lyman and Linden. If we decide that we want to increase our environmental justice percentage, or I don't know exactly what metric they use to calculate it, but we could include a flat trail that might have some sensory stations for handicapped people. It could end in a garden, a sitting area with a garden, as a place, as a flat walk for seniors and people with disabilities. But if we include that as part of our environmental justice, kind of boosting our environmental EJ numbers for the grant, then we take that corner off the chopping block, as it were, for house lots.
Mhm.
So talk about moving parts. We got a couple here. So, and honestly, one thing that we have talked about is taking the flats area off the list for house lots for the moment. If we don't get the grants, that can always change. Or a grant.
So what if we were to move forward with a proposal to work with 325 for you guys, and then give historic automatically what's-ever in the historic fund, which to me is 48 up to 53, and then whatever else is available by reducing your amount when we finally figure out what that figure is, which I would think June could help us with that, certainly before we get to having to close for the warrant, that would go to the Historic Commission as well. So that might pick them up. Instead of just getting 48 or 50, they might get closer to 75, which still doesn't get you to 100, but it seems like it gives you a little more wiggle room
It would
when it
help
comes to
Yeah,
working
would
with
help with
Tim.
the archaeological survey, yeah.
Yeah. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yes.
But that means this round, we don't do anything with Ag Commission and we don't do anything with the Rec Committee. So I guess let's throw those ideas around. What do people feel about that?
So just one quick question. So the 325 uses what's in open space and then the balance comes, no. So that doesn't touch what's in open space.
Oh, yeah, it does. It uses what's in
Okay.
open space. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it takes the 48 out of open space and then uses the, I think she figures, I forget what her figure is. It's less than mine, but again, if that figure increases, we can float around. But essentially, I guess what I'm throwing out on the table is we fund you at 325. So you've got a figure that you're confident about. You can go to the finance committee and the selectmen and everybody else and say, I'm short this amount.
Right. That is helpful.
And then we say, any grant money comes back and replenishes free cash first, and then any additional funds comes back into CPA. And then we say to the Historic Commission, you've got automatically what's in your kitty, which is the 48 plus whatever else is in the budgeted reserve that's not committed as a result of what we're given to conservation at 325, which bumps Historic up to the point where they can get the survey done and get some work out of Tim in terms of his analysis and allows them to keep the 100,000 fully intact and apply for the state grant. How are we on that, folks?
So what round would they reapply? The people that we're knocking off?
Well, if we heard, I guess what we got to figure out is if the money from the state, if there was a state match from for conservation, and
Right,
that
if we
money
get
came
one of
back
those
in,
grants.
and that money came back into us before November, would we be able to expend any of that in November, or is it tied up because it goes, it's not in our budgeted reserve, it's just in our general fund? I would think.
And it's
that-
not allocated at town meeting, because at town meeting, we have to pre-allocate what we expect to get in fiscal FY23.
Yeah, so the question is, can we put an article on the warrant that says any money that comes back to CPA from federal matching money is put into the budgeted reserve? I don't know if we can do that, but we could try. And then that would make it available for the November town meeting. And then, that would give folks a chance for those rounds then. I think if we try to fund either one of those, we compromise these other two projects, which I guess I still look at the other two, the Historic Commission's project and the Conservation Commission's acquisition as higher priority in my mind anyway. So I'm looking to hear what other people think about that assumption on my part. Am I out on a limb, or do people feel comfortable with that?
Well, given that both they are seeking grant money, and the fact that we've already committed money to them to this point, it does seem that by those metrics that there is a higher priority to that, not that I certainly want to see everything
Yeah.
get done, and I'm certainly not meaning to pick favorites in terms of, what committee's work is being done, but we're already kind of knee deep into both of those. With something we can hopefully get out of them with grants, and hopefully, the next couple rounds of money, hopefully kind of redistribute our focus on what committees are getting money and such.
Yeah, the good news is that, and I want to talk about this a little later, but the housing component, we're not spending any money on that. They're getting up close. I guess they got they'll have $125,000, $130,000, and but they can come in and begin to ask for money, and it would be there, and it wouldn't have to curtail anybody else's effort, because they wouldn't have to go into the budgeted reserve for some of the projects they want to work on. So that's the good part about that effort. Any thoughts, James?
My question is, with the CPA, with this committee, are we looking at what we recommend to the vote, or are we just saying what qualifies for the vote?
Well,
Both.
Yeah.
Both.
If the town meeting can't act unless we recommend, and we shouldn't recommend anything that we can't fund. So right now, what we're trying to figure out is, because we're in a truncated process here. I mean, normally we'd be looking at a pre-app and say, you're eligible, flesh this out and come back and talk to us. But I don't think we're in that position, given the fact that the warrant closes in probably 3 weeks. So, we've got to move this along, because we're going to have one more meeting in mid-February to finalize and put some tighter figures on this. But
the only thing I feel kind of bad is that we're skipping over the rec one without Julie here to kind of defend it.
right.
I really wish she could be here to kind of go through why we need it, and maybe there's a reason. Like with the school playground, I know there was a lot of safety issues and everything else that we needed, so it's kind of tough since she couldn't be here tonight. And I don't know how quickly we have to make this decision, but it would have been nice to kind of get a representative to hear why we need it and everything else.
Well, we're going to have, I think we're going to move forward tonight, hopefully with some sort of sense as to what our priorities are, so we can begin to do some fill-in in terms of numbers, clarify a few more things with June, and also with Stuart in regard to what happens to CPA money that might be reimbursed to the fund, and whether it could be expended in a November round.
I do think with the land, we kind of have to figure it out, since we've already allocated a huge chunk from the previous meeting. Whatever it was, 400,000 or 500,000. So I think we need to figure out how to close that one and get it done, considering we've already put out so much on it. So I think that's got to be the one we got to figure out, just because we're already in it so far. So.
But we also don't want to hamper Historical's opportunity to get $100,000.
Right.
Yeah.
All right. Yep.
So I agree. Obviously I agree conservation, but I agree that Historical should get the next big chunk. To lose that opportunity to get a match. I don't think that's the best way to spend the funds right now. I think Historic gets what they need.
Well, I think the town will appreciate the fact that we're using CPA money to leverage every opportunity we can to pull in more state money and matching money. And that's what happens with both these proposals, clearly. So that's the benefit.
Yeah, the grant factor and the free money from the.
Yep.
Hello? Can you call me in 45 minutes? Okay. No. Okay. Thank you. And
Gave me a minute to catch up on the minutes.
we don't have any word from Eloise, unfortunately, but Eloise, do you want to call me on the phone? And if you have any thoughts that you want to express, I can put you on speaker. If you don't have anything to say, then don't bother. But I mean, I think everybody like to hear your thoughts if you care to share them anyway. 978-838-2809.
Oh, now everybody on YouTube is going to call you.
Uh-oh.
Yeah.
What do you know? Yes.
Greetings.
Do you have thoughts?
I can hear you all fine.
Yeah, but we can't hear you.
I know, but I am loud. I'm the only one up here working away.
Do you have any thoughts on what we've been deliberating?
Yeah. How much would the lot go, one or two lots go on Lyman Road, on the Grail Farm?
So James, you can probably answer that.
Probably right now, about 250. It depends on engineering and perks and everything else, but if they were engineered, you're probably looking at 250.
Is that for a single family?
Yep, because that's all it would probably be zoned for. We're at that neighborhood.
No, 40B doesn't have to pay attention to zoning.
We
But
don't have to anymore.
Huh?
We don't have to do 40B anymore. I believe we're over the limits, right, Tim?
For certain kinds, that's true. But if you have something that the town really wants, you can still approve one. It's just if it's something the town definitely doesn't want, you can shut it down.
True. I don't know if I'd recommend that piece of property for a 40B type project because of kind of the value of it. But that's just my opinion.
What do you mean the value?
I would probably try to save it. And if we couldn't save it, then I would try to, if we were low on money, then it's a big value property of where it is, of what we could get for it if we had to do it.
Okay, and how much is in housing for the community preservation?
125 or 30.
So
And
housing
with the-
right now has 125,000 to it?
Yes.
Do you want to buy a lot?
Yeah, you
I
got
might.
77,000 from the first 2 years, which we didn't expend, but we allocated to your fund, and then you've got the other 48 that came in this year that's been allocated.
Okay. Well, it's just a thought.
I think just how expensive it is to build right now, it would just, to build any type of housing, even the low income stuff would be extraordinarily expensive right now. I mean, 125,000 gets you a garage at this point.
Yeah, but
One
I'm
car or
just
two.
looking to buy the land.
Right.
Oh, okay.
Buy the lot right now and have it available for,
Because they're not
a
making
future
too much
project.
land anymore.
Yeah.
Right, but we buy land in another section of town and maybe get more lots out of it in a different section. That's
Where?
not so, well, right, not at this moment, but let's say somewhere near like on West Street or something. You could get a lot more for the money on West Street than you're going to, on one of those lots in such a critically environmental sensitive area.
Okay. I will ponder that.
I mean, I would love to see the housing part go to kind of keeping people in their houses. Maybe somebody who needs, an affordable loan or something like that, that's already in town, rather than building more houses, kind of fixing up ones that maybe have deteriorated and helping out people already here.
I agree.
Okay, so other than that, Eloise, any other thoughts?
Nope. Good evening.
Thank you.
I always
Bye.
So, we can leave the discussion where it is with the understanding that we'll flesh out some of these numbers that are, it seems like our primary objective is still to look at these two proposals as the top priorities. But if we don't take action tonight, we could at least give Julie an opportunity to voice some of the thoughts she has.
Yep.
In regard to the project that she's proposing. And again, we'll have a clearer idea as to what our numbers look like. And we'll get some clarification from Stuart as to whether or not money that comes into the CPA pool, that we, is there some vehicle that we can use to make that available at that November town meeting if any of it does materialize? Or do we have to wait because it's not allocated and there's no way to allocate it as anticipated, that sort of thing, so. Have we beat that one enough for tonight?
Yes. Yes, we have. But I think that's definitely a great question to ask Stuart.
Yeah.
Because if we can do that, then that's a no-brainer.
Good.
Yep.
I sent around an annual report, which I've got to submit by
Monday.
Monday.
Yeah, so I didn't do anything elaborate. I plagiarized from a couple other things we pulled together. If people have particular thoughts they think ought to be included in it, email me and I'll add them. And otherwise, we'll submit this on Monday, and that'll be finished with. And the only other thing that I wanted to talk about was, where's my list? It has to do with the housing section. The Massachusetts Housing Massachusetts Housing Partnership had worked last year with 2 towns in the Commonwealth to give them about 8 months worth of technical assistance to either work on a housing project or to establish a trust. And in both cases, they worked with towns that already had trusts. And they, I guess they worked with Revere and Weymouth or something like that. And they decided to do that again this year, and they sent out a notice recently, and I talked to Margaret, and we agreed that we submit an application, and so that went in last week, and we got word today that they received it, and they're going to let us know the first part of February. They will, because the town is part of the Assabet Regional Housing Collaborative now, we have their support for helping us manage our subsidized housing inventory, and also working with us in some imaginative ways to expend particularly CPA money on housing assistance, rental assistance, stuff like that. And then the planning board and the housing partnership are working with Central Mass Regional Planning on the update of the housing production plan, as well as the housing portion of the master plan. And we've got CPA money. So those three things are converging. And we said to Mass Housing Partnership, because these activities are going forward and the town is beginning to be interested in the possibility of creating a housing trust, we'd like you to work with us on that. So we may very well find that, you know, last time they only had 10 applicants for 2 spots. So, you know, it's not, the odds aren't as bad as it is for Conservation Commission looking for money for the state. And this isn't money, it's really technical assistance. So I'm wondering if, and I haven't thought about this enough, but it almost seems like we may want to, and I'll talk to Eloise some more, but we may want to say that a certain amount of money that's in the housing fund be allocated for use with technical assistance, so we can expend some of that if we need to work on these multiple projects. And so I may very well, if Eloise is interested, try to package up some small little proposal that would only utilize housing money. So it wouldn't encumber any of the funds that we're trying to allocate for some of these other projects. It would simply use the money that's already there, and only a small portion of it probably. But that's something that I didn't get a chance to finish up, but I do think it has some possibilities. So I may very well send that around to folks before we meet again, if that's all right. Is that all right?
Yes.
Sounds good.
Anything else on this meeting tonight? People all set for now?
Yeah, I got the answer that I needed in order to go before capital planning and FinCom and write warrant articles and all that.
Right. But I'll chase Stuart and give you a better idea of what's going on with how they view that.
Yeah, that would
Funds
be great.
coming back
I
in.
imagine that would be a separate warrant article anyway.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it'll be interesting. When do we want to meet again?
Do you know, they haven't given a date for warrant articles, a deadline yet though, has there?
Well, I don't believe I've seen one. Have you seen one, Elaine?
Yes, but I don't have it in front of me.
I
Doesn't
don't
help.
know.
Doesn't help.
Well, President's Day is the 21st. If they were going to close the warrant on the 22nd, which otherwise it would be on Valentine's Day, the 14th. That seems almost too quick.
I thought it was awfully quick. I think it's earlier than that.
It's
Is it
earlier
really?
than the
I
14th.
want to say like the 10th. I want to say the
Ouch.
10th.
Ouch, ouch, ouch.
I may be wrong, but that's what sticks in my head.
That would be a Thursday.
Aren't they usually due on a Monday?
Yeah, but before the selectmen's meeting opens, you know, it used to be
Right,
an hour
like
into the
5
meeting.
o'clock the day.
Yeah, now it's,
Yeah,
let
or
me,
2, yeah.
Eloise, if you know, can you call me? Eloise.
Here's a calendar.
Actually, I can call her at her office, but she may be calling me already.
Ring, 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 ring.
She's still on with us, or did she?
She's still logged on, yeah. She
Okay.
might be waiting on a customer.
What are you looking for?
Can you tell me when the warrant closes? They haven't set a date?
Yeah, I didn't think so.
Okay. On my town government or on the town's website? Yeah. Right. I'll look up that. Oh, you do. I'm just talking about the money you've got in CPA. Yep. Yeah. Okay, thank you. She doesn't know.
Right. And usually once they set a date, it's big news that's repeated often.
Annual street list, distribution of town, COVID, coffee talk, pen pal, updated rental. No, there's nothing on the website. Okay, well, let's look. If we were to meet next week is the 2nd. If we were to meet the 9th, that's 2 weeks. Shall we tentatively say it's the 9th if the warrant's going to close on the 14th? And if the warrant's going to close on the 21st, we'll make it the 16th? Does that work for folks?
I can't do the 16th.
Okay.
I can't do the 9th. It's historical.
Okay.
So
So
you'd have a
neither of
problem.
those works.
Right.
MJ, are you available on nights other than Wednesdays?
I would most likely have to come in from work, but you know, I can make do with another night.
Right. So Tim, we can't meet the 8th.
Right.
I can do Thursday, the 10th.
Thursday, the 10th. How's that for folks?
I'm texting Julie.
It's her birthday. She's not going to respond.
She might not, but she might. The kids might be in bed. And well, probably, maybe not.
Not on a birthday night. If the warrant's going to close on the 14th, we shoot for the 10th. And if it's going to close on the 21st, how is the 15th for people?
Yep, that's fine too.
Yep.
Okay. All right. I'll find out when the warrant's going to close and then I'll post the meeting accordingly.
10th or 15th. Okay.
Good.
Excellent.
Good. Anything else?
I believe that's it. Walter
Oh.
was tracking a moose today in
Who
town.
was?
Walter.
Really?
Yeah, in the snow. So I guess somebody has a trail camera set up near where he was following it. And the guy said the moose went by and 8 minutes later, Walter went by.
Fantastic.
Yeah. So I think that's great.
That is good. That'll keep them out of trouble, right? Good.
One would
All right.
think, wouldn't one?
Do we have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
Second, and we'll do a roll call. MJ,
Yes.
Elaine,
Aye.
Carolyn,
Aye.
James.
Aye.
Thank you, Eloise. I vote to adjourn. Thank you all very much. 8:30, nice job.